All right. Greetings, everybody. Wanted to personally welcome you to Taking Aim, Integrated Planning Framework and Secrets to Success, presented by Intelligent Demand and Topo, now Gartner. We are so glad and thankful that you're here today. My name is Mike Swaney, and I'm Vice President of Growth Consulting at Intelligent Demand. I'll be acting as de facto MC for today. Super excited to be here and glad that you've chosen to join us today. I know you're in for a real treat. Before I introduce today's featured speakers, I want to share just a bit of housekeeping with you. First, this is a live webinar, so we will be engaging and interacting with you and each other, just like the good old days of real in-person presentations. And I might add, not like the pre-recorded stuff that's happening over at B2B today and yesterday, and I can prove it. In fact, I just read that Shailene Woodley and Aaron Rodgers are officially engaged. How's that for a headline for today? But we are recording today's session, and we will make it available on demand shortly after the completion of the event. You have a chance to view it again, share it with your colleagues who couldn't make it. I know we're up against B2B today. And certainly view it again at your leisure. And real quick, you can use your chat box in the On24 viewer to submit any questions, and we'll answer those toward the end of the session. And certainly, please submit questions at any time if we can get to them throughout the course of the conversation, and we will, again, unlike B2B. But now I am pleased to introduce our featured speakers for today. Please give it up for Rachel Lamy, the Vice President of Integrated Growth Strategy at Intelligent Demand, and Chris Moody, who is Senior Director and Analyst at Topo, now Gartner. Rachel and Chris, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. To just echo what Mike was saying, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for the next hour. We hope that it's going to be as much learning material, and it's going to be beneficial for you all. We're excited to be here as well. I'm going to just jump on into things and talk a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So Chris is going to help walk us through a recap of the last webinar that he participated in with John Common, our CEO. And from there, we're going to talk about what you're all here to talk about, which is integration. We're going to talk about a little bit how we define it and think about it, its role in the campaign process, how to plan and how to make sure that you are thinking about things properly. And we're going to walk through some of the common pitfalls and challenges that we see with clients and others when they are setting up an integrated campaign, and talk through the solutions, and then hopefully answer any questions that you have. So without further ado, I'm going to let Chris take it away.
Thank you very much. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us on this lovely day. It's actually 60 degrees in Denver and Raleigh, North Carolina today. I don't know how that works, but congratulations to all involved. A couple things I'd love to share first as a recap from the last webinar with John, which is available. It's recorded. You can find that via Intelligent Demand. I'm sure it will be linked from this webinar series as well. But the first big thing that we covered in the previous webinar was to start to break down the silos between account-based and demand generation. And at Topo and Gartner, we work with a wide range of clients, just like Intelligent Demand. And one thing that we see very frequently is tension between the account-based side and the traditional demand generation side. What we worked to do last time with John and I was to break down the myth that these are two completely separate things. And if you look at the visual here, when we talk about account-based and demand generation, we actually see a huge overlap and sharing of tools and tactics. We're not usually doing something completely new with a completely new platform in account-based or demand generation. We're sharing things back and forth. So more detail can be found on that in the previous webinar. Same for best practices. We need to take what's working with account-based, pull that into our demand generation. As we talk about integrated planning today, we really need to pull that in. We need to think about what's working in the plans that we have built and run and executed for either account-based or demand generation. Same goes for insights. We need to share all those learnings back and forth. Anything that we have started to identify about accounts that we're getting success in, let's pull that into our targeted demand generation. And then also, if we look at new contacts from target accounts, this is one area where demand generation strategies, once we go through our integrated planning exercise and we think about everything you're going to talk about today with us, we will take the contacts that come in from our target accounts and we want to pull that into our account-based motion. That's very important because account-based are going to have our more strategic teams or cross-functional teams that are really spending more time, more money, more resources to close our key accounts. We want to make sure we do that. And then lastly, on this slide, there's only one more recap slide. Then we're jumping right in. Lastly, when we see with account base that we find someone who is a good fit for our business, but they're not on our target account list, that is someone that we can pull through into our demand generation programs. Again, integrated planning fits with everything we talked about. So one more important thing to cover before we jump in. Some of the key takeaways from the time that we spent on the previous webinar. First, you have to apply the 8 B2B growth pillars. They are mandatory for account-based success. Rachel and team can cover this in great detail. Intelligent Demand has done some outstanding work on this, but that is all available in the slides and recorded. That will help you up-level the performance of your account-based and demand generation programs. Secondly, we have to enable a flexible go-to-market portfolio. This is one that I personally geek out on a bunch. We cannot have silos. We need flow of information, insights, learnings back and forth between account-based and demand generation. Third, we have to embrace an audience focus. Rachel and I will cover this some today, but if we're not aligned to our clients' mission-critical priorities or the business we are trying to close their mission-critical priorities, then we cannot build an adequate plan. The plan has to be related to the mission-critical priorities of who we are trying to help or who we're trying to do business with. And then lastly, we have to orchestrate everything. This is a theme that pulls through today, but we have to have fluid transitions between all of our go-to-market motions and all of the teams involved. So Rachel, that is, I guess, 1 hour and 15 minutes summarized in just a few minutes. So I will click to the next slide and let you get us started on integration.
Perfect, thanks. So you may be asking why we have the definition of integration in this deck. And when you think about integration, it makes me personally think a lot about buzzwords because I hear it all the time. It's up there with digital transformation for me. It gets thrown around a lot and people have a little bit of a different understanding and usage of it. So to make sure that we are all starting off on the same page, when we talk about integration, especially when it comes to campaigns, it's really making sure that all of the parts and components are brought together and collaborate in a collaborative way. They're combined and completing essentially something. It's really bringing together those parts into a whole. Anything you want to add on buzzword-wise, Chris? Now I'm curious. Digital transformation.
Synergy.
What's here? Synergy. That's a good one. Yeah. But yeah, integration for me is right up there. I hear it all the time. So hopefully this is a pretty good level set before we dive into why it is so important. The role that it plays is something that has to be defined and executed against when it comes to campaigns. And whether it's account-based or demand gen, which Chris was just kind of filling us in on that he and John spoke to, it needs to be incorporated and thought through. And at ID, we have a 5-framework approach when it comes to campaigns. And we have a webinar that we're happy to send out the link to if anyone wants to check it out. But essentially, in step 5, we're talking about the architecture and building out all of the tactics and channels and components that make up an integrated campaign. And without an integrated nature happening in the architecture, you're going to be set up to not see the best possible success that you could see. Things will be more in a silo. And certainly we understand there's challenges that come up along the way, which we'll talk about in a couple slides from now. But making sure that everything is cohesive and tying together and unified is so, so important to make sure that you're going to set yourself up for success and see the best possible outcome with your campaign. You put so much into this outside of just budget that it's worth it to make sure that you're continually checking in on the integration piece and not just setting it and forgetting it. That is absolutely not a thing that we recommend or will do with our clients when it comes to an integrated campaign. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits of integration. And this first call out around wasted activity, we highlight for one key reason, and that's something that we see all the time with marketers is just a sense of having to prove activity. A lot of times marketers are having to just show that they are doing something. They are putting something in market to get a certain result. They are moving this piece here and changing budgets around. And it's more about activity, less about growth and really driving results and revenue. To do that, it takes a lot more effort, time, energy to really connect all of the pieces and ensure they're working together properly. But when you're not integrating properly for a campaign, you are just showing activity and you're wasting a lot of your own energy, time, budget to make sure you're just kind of moving pieces around to satisfy an ask of you. And we get it, it happens. And the whole point of this webinar today is to help talk you through what you can do differently. Some of those other key benefits, when you do integrate properly, you're going to see less wasted budget. You're going to see better campaign outcomes. That is one thing we will continue to talk about throughout this webinar. You're just going to see stronger results across the board because you have all of the moving parts and pieces working together, telling the same story, tying in the same message, and working against or towards rather the same objective. And with all of that, you're spending less time and energy, less wasted calories, better CX for your customers, your accounts you're targeting. This is key in getting them to engage, to want to learn more about you, your product, whatever it is that you're putting out there in a campaign. All of these pieces are what you're going to see as an outcome when you're integrating properly and planning the integration piece properly. Is there anything else that you'd add, Chris? I know you're always seeing things pop up and in terms of the benefits. Yes.
I think for those of us who are on live today and for all of those who will listen to this recording, if you have ever done great work that has not launched, you carry that battle scar with you forever. I can tell you in great detail the most amazing campaign that I have ever built that I am confident would have won many awards that never made it out the door. I think I can pinpoint some of the reasons. But when we talk about integration, we want to preempt and prevent that from happening. So this is not a buzzword. As Rachel's been covering the benefits here, when you think about integration, sometimes we have to go to the negative side of this to really understand how important it is. We do not want more meetings. We do not want to be stuck in project management software. But as we go through this today, the thing that I would love to stress, and this is personal experience from being in marketing roles, good gracious, 20 years now? Oh my gosh, that's scary. For being in marketing roles for a long time and working across a wide range of clients, we really need to make sure that we are executing to the best of our ability to be extremely integrated. There is no company in the world that is perfect at integration, not a single one. Rachel and I combined, we could probably tally up some insane number of how many folks we have spoken with in the last year, the last 2 years. But that's the thing that I would stress, no matter where you are today and how well aligned you are across all of the teams, across how you execute campaigns, across how you plan, there's always room for improvement. And I would say strongly that it is well spent time to improve how you are integrated, how you become integrated, and how you do better work together. So that's the thing that I would stress as we look at the benefits here. Some of this may feel cookie cutter-esque when we talk about integration, and it's not. We carry battle scars with us, those of us who have been on the opposite side of this, and then we've seen it in client work as well. So that's the only thing I would add on here, Rachel, just to make sure that all of our hearts and minds are in the right place to prevent being in that terrible negative space that we do bring back to our personal lives, especially now in a pandemic, right? When this does not go well, it impacts us if we care about our work. So this is about doing great work together.
Yeah, that's a great point, and really interesting that your right off the bat answer was you could think of when it's gone really well and the thing you're really proud of. In addition to the battle scars, I go to battle scars. I immediately think of all of the things that I've seen over the years, go wrong, to make sure that we're course correcting all the time. We're not perfect, to your point. I'd be really curious for all of you on the call, where does your mind go when you're thinking about integration? Are you thinking about the campaigns that you've done really well and you want to improve on, or some of those battle scars that you're learning from to elevate and move yourself forward? And I know we have everyone on mute, but throw anything in the chat if you want to bring it up or talk about it later. Just curious everyone's perspective. All right, moving on, some more benefits and stats to call out just across the board, really backing up the emphasis that we place on integration and doing it right and the realness behind it. And to Chris's point earlier, it is not a buzzword. Even in just looking in these stats, 38% higher customer retention rates. That is something that I have seen firsthand with a client. The minute that we took some of their siloed marketing efforts and we started to combine them, we started to tie them together through messaging, positioning, creative themes, started to make sure that there was a better flow in communication when it came to, media, direct mail, and email. Once we started to integrate things, we watched their churn drop from about 13% to 6%. So we see this. All of these stats that are up here, we have worked with clients. I know Chris can say the same as well, that we have seen in real life that these are the results you can expect. None of these are just arbitrary numbers thrown out there. You're going to see better alignment, especially when I think there's a stat in here around 20% of an annual growth rate when there's a strong integration between sales and marketing. And that is absolutely true, because something that we talk time and time again about is alignment and the importance of having sales and marketing always in lockstep. And we'll talk a little bit more as we go on around ways to ensure that that's happening. But the more you're able to do that and increase that collaboration and alignment, the stronger the results are going to be. So any examples that come to mind for you, Chris, as you're looking at some of these stats?
Yes, I mean, lots of examples come to mind. Just to confirm this, I have 2 calls within an hour and a half of us ending this webinar on this very topic with marketing leaders, and a lot of the integration stories, it's usually marketing and sales as an entry point. It's talking about how to integrate between marketing and sales. And we have seen organizations that do this really well. They are sought out. Back when we had in-person events, if someone spoke to this and they showed a plan for how they became integrated and what a true integrated strategy looked like inside their organization, marketing leaders ran to the front of the room after they would finish speaking. And we have the virtual version of that now, right? We have folks who are asking us privately, I'm sure both of us do, hey, who's doing this well? Can I speak with them? Can you connect me with them? I want to hear what's working. Can you help us with this? So that's the thing I'd say. The stats are true. There are a ton of stats to see higher ROI, higher growth rate, higher retention rate. And the reason is, it's one of the benefits you hit, Rachel, right? Like when we are integrated, we are creating this better customer experience. And I would argue that may be the most important thing we could do right now because of digital fatigue, being stuck in our homes. Everyone is kind of ready to go back to normal, whatever normal means going forward. I have no idea, but we feel that. So we have to break through. And the only way to do that is with a better experience. And you can't do that without integration.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's challenging. Real integration is challenging. We do not want to skip over that. Or make it seem that all of this is easy and that you have unlimited budget and unlimited time and unlimited resources. We know that there are a lot of factors at play. I love to use terrible analogies, not on purpose. They usually just come out that way. In this case, when I think about integration and the challenging nature of it, I think about buying a car. And whether you're married, dating, and going into a decision like that, you want to make sure that that other person, your stakeholder, is aligned. You're not just going to, for the most part, go out around Christmas time, buy a Lexus, bring it back to the driveway, slap a bow on it, and say, Merry Christmas. you're typically going to talk it through with someone, make sure there's alignment first. And then when it comes to the strategy around it, if you're living in Denver right now, you're likely not going to go out and buy a Ferrari because it's going to snow tomorrow. You're not going to be able to drive the car. It's going to be pretty, but not functional. And when you look at all of these other bullet points on the slide, they all very much fall into that same category for me. You're looking to make sure that your journey, where are you going to be in a year, 5 years? Does this car you're going to buy match that need now and in the future? Is it going to be all of the things you need? Does it have the right technology? Are you thinking through all of the pieces and parts you need and what you want it to do? And also, like a car, once you purchase it, you can't just let it ride and let it take care of itself. There's oil changes, there's maintenance, the little lights will flash off and annoy you and you have to take it in and figure out what's going on. This is very much an integrated campaign. You cannot set it and just let it ride and say, I integrated it, so it's going to work. You have to keep nurturing it and checking in on it and optimizing it and making sure that you're paying attention and putting back into your investment the time and energy that you saved essentially by helping to make this be more of an integrated campaign to make the most of it. It's an always on campaign that you want to make sure you are investing back in. Now into some planning for integration. You want to help out with this, Chris?
Oh, yes. I love this topic. And, your analogy, I like the car buying experience. I have actually bought a car without really seeking my wife's approval once, and it did not go well.
Yeah,
it was not a significant purchase at the time. Like, it was an inexpensive car, but still. The points are valid, and I usually go to relationships. So very much the same kind of tone. If we're trying to embark on a long-lasting relationship, we have to have similar goals too. So when we talk about planning, the way I'd like to think about this, if you don't know where you're going, you will never get there. And we have to set clear goals. This is not to still the thunder of some of the things we will talk about as we jump into this, but that is very important. And we talked about it on the last webinar too, the mission critical priority. That's the first thing I would start to stress as we get into this. We need to understand what we are trying to accomplish so we can all get on the same page to work towards that. Now, the 3 steps that we're going to walk you through as we plan for integration today. So I'll cover these 3, and then we're going to jump into probably a section that everyone wants to hear, solving some of these challenges that you are experiencing. So the first step here, we have to have visibility into annual marketing activities and plans within your organization. This is aligning to the goal. If we don't know the top tier business objectives, then we cannot take our top tier marketing objectives and attach them to the top tier business objectives. So that first piece, we have to know what we're trying to do. Are we focusing more on retention or net new acquisition? Are we trying to cross-sell, upsell? Or are we trying to go out and get brand new customers, like that new acquisition again? We need to understand what our mix needs to be, what our top priorities need to be, so we can start to build plans against them. I will also stress here, we will have tons of goals as marketers. We need to try to know the prioritization of those goals. We need to have the singular focus first and then work to our number 2 or number 3, because we need that North Star. That's what we're going to cover in step 1, how to kind of look at this and organize all of the information. Then secondly, we need to navigate our way around a spreadsheet. This is kind of the least desirable topic to many marketers, but I have found myself loving spreadsheets and data much more than I did in the past. I will tell you how dorky I am. I actually have a Google sheet that is comparing LeBron James versus Michael Jordan. I created that in personal time because I think that LeBron James is going to go down as the GOAT. So don't at me. I know that that's a controversial topic, but I have looked at the data there. We need to understand what's the way we're organizing all of the details for our integrated plan in a manner that anyone can view. Now, I will underline and italicize anyone can view. we have all worked in organizations or may be in an organization that uses project management software. And we can have a huge list that we can spend a ton of time learning the tool. I will not name any tools, but there are tools that will manage every single thing that you do for the rest of your professional life. That is not the level of detail we need for integration. So we have to think about what's important. How do we organize that? That's going to be step 2. And then step 3, we have to know how to book meetings through a workplace calendar tool. Obviously, Chris, is probably what you're thinking here. But the point that we are going to stress to you, that Rachel and I will stress, and Rachel's going to jump in with any anecdote she wants to share as we go through these next 3. But the thing that I would love to emphasize here, there is a difference between a meeting and an effective meeting that is in the realm of integration and working together. And here's what we're trying to accomplish. And that's what we're going to walk through in step 3. So Rachel, anything high level you'd like to cover here before we jump in, or you can chime in on individual steps?
Yeah, I think the third point around meetings is it's already important, but especially now when I'm sure everyone is feeling the same pain with meetings, that they've just exploded in the time of COVID. The minute that you start working from home more meetings pop up. So making sure it is an effective one, and also that you have been able to carve out that time and prioritize that time and make sure that you don't get triple booked for it is really difficult and so important. So I think that point, especially now with meetings kind of exploding all over the place, is something that is going to be so relevant as we dive into it.
That's exactly right. And eliminating the guilt around not being in a meeting too, right? Like this should be important. Everyone should want to be there. I had a colleague who accidentally butt dialed several of us into a meeting last night while I was cooking dinner for 3 kids. So, that was when I'm like, I'm going to decline. And then my brain immediately went, what if it's important? What if they need me? And then we found out the next day, like that was an accident. So we're trying to prevent that guilt type feeling. We should know when we're meeting, what we're talking about, what the agenda is, knock it out together. Okay,
Yeah.
Let's jump in. Step number 1. So the first thing we have to do, we have to have a singular view of all the marketing activity. So this is our 30,000, 100,000 foot view, whichever footage you would like to use for the view here. This is our high level. We need to have the zoomed out view of what is happening and when it is happening. Everyone in the organization will want to see this. They may not want all the detail that we're going to progress into, but they will want to understand what campaigns are running and when is it going to be my turn to get assistance, right? Like if we start with vertical campaigns, the first section here, obviously many of us are going to do vertical marketing. We may have all of these verticals running at the same time, depending on resources, or they may be staggered. So we need to start to show that over time. Secondly, we have always on campaigns. So these are campaigns that essentially never end, hence always on, but we have intensity bursts. So you can see that this is a rotation where we have a send that's going out that covers the 4 key topics in this example for this anonymized client here. We have 4 key topics that are covered in one send. Then we're going to stress sales effectiveness. Then we have 4 key topics that will be emphasized again. Then we're going to deep dive on marketing ROI. Then we come back and hit all 4. So you can see we're building out this cadence in the always on in this scenario. Now the timing can change for any of these. The point is the singular view. And then lastly, we have our trigger campaigns. So if you're familiar with intent data or any signal or trigger, these are campaigns that are always on, but they only happen when certain criteria are met. So for high intent, if we have a score, an intent score or intent data that we're capturing, we may see signals that say, if this is reached, then we run this campaign. So that could run at any time. Same for a new key hire or competitive contract. Those are signals that we may get from our sellers, or we may get from mining data or information, depending on the tool set that we have. That is something that could also trigger a campaign. So the importance of having this all in one place is not just to show, hey, we're doing a lot. This is not activity-based marketing. That's a different ABM. We are trying to show that we're knowledgeable about our approach for what we're doing, when we're doing it, and why we're doing it. And then we will progress into a deeper dive on step 2. So you can see one example of what is underneath each thing listed here. Rachel, I know that you do this all day, every day. Anything you want to cover here?
Yeah, I think in addition to everything that you said, what I've seen happen as well is, a business unit within an organization will be given additional budget and basically told, here, you've got this. Just make sure that you have some ROI. If you show results and you can show them in a short amount of time, there's more where that came from. But it's very much a prove it or you lose it type of budget. And those business units, if they don't have this kind of a view into what other business units, other teams, other product specialists are doing, they may just forge ahead, launch something, and because of something else in market, it completely takes away the focus and it tanks an otherwise great creative theme and messaging and positioning to where they're not going to get more budget to help optimize, scale, grow. They need this type of a view to see what everyone else is doing and when, to be strategic in planning out their launch, to make sure they have the right amount of eyes and the right people paying attention to their campaign so they can get the results they want and therefore get additional budget. So we've seen this type of a view be critical to business units securing budget and securing additional budget to keep growing.
That's exactly right. And even repurposing content, to your point, there may be a business unit that's creating something that is 90% there for what another group is thinking about. If you don't have that singular view, you can't get there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do a zoomed in view on one of these campaigns on the next slide. Just a chance. We see some questions popping up in Q&A. If you have questions, you can go ahead and put them in there. We will have time for Q&A at the end, so we'll try to tackle as many questions as you have. So feel free to pop those in Q&A section here. All right. Secondly, build and maintain a consistent view of campaigns and respective details. Now, what is listed here, the actual text in that middle column is not important. I will say that first of all. So if you cannot see that, if it's small for you, if you want to take a screenshot, this will be provided, but that's all an example. The yellow sections here, I'm going to talk through that and explain why this is important to organize it this way. So think of this as a campaign brief, if you will. Many of us have worked in brief type formats, especially if we have any agency experience. But a lot of us on the practitioner side, and I've been guilty of this too, once we get in the work, we tend to discount or ignore organizing our information this way. Sometimes we jump in and we do. And we may be getting great results, but eventually you will encounter a leader in your career that is going to say, where's the brief? Or what's the plan? And if we don't have this documented, it puts us in a problematic situation. So just to talk about the elements here, and then I am, again, 5,000% sure that Rachel will have something to add here based on the work that they do at Intelligent Demand. But the elements here, first, we have a summary of the campaign that's running. So this is just a quick overview. You'll also see that there are owners and links that are established here. Knowing who is doing what is half the battle when we start to think about integration. That's why owners are there. And then links are here because this simple spreadsheet view is not going to replace all the bodies of work that happen, and we should not try to shove them all in there. This is something that I've seen as well. I have seen clients that have a single tab in a spreadsheet that tries to include every single asset in the campaign. You don't need to do that. You can link to another place. We need that table of contents type approach that is consistent, that everyone can understand. Seller, marketer, customer experience, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. So first we have our summary. Then you will see we are specifying a primary goal in this example. Rachel and I will both tell you the importance of knowing what is the number one thing we're trying to accomplish. In many cases, the work that we are in now, if we don't hit the primary goal for our clients, then we do not get renewal. We have to know what we're trying to do. Secondary goals, we can include others. Now, if you can see the text here, if not, screenshot, zoom in, this will be provided. We need specific goals. If we can put numbers on this or percentage growth, that's very important as well. There's a ton of research and work on SMART goals and the acronym there, but that's important. We need to define our goals and our priorities. Next, we're jumping into the audience. Who are we trying to target? We may have persona work that sits beside this. That's great. Let's link to it. We don't need to do it here in this view. Then we have messaging. Again, we're going to have messaging for that particular audience. If not, we need to establish it. Then we're going to link to it. We're not trying to jam it all into this summary view. Then we can highlight the key content that's going to be used in this campaign and organize that in the plan. Then we have our time frame when it's going to run, which directly corresponds to the previous view we showed you, the zoomed out view. We could also list out our emails here so people know what is being sent and when. They could click in to view that. And then lastly, we hook into brand and creative. You will see that there is a creative theme for the 2 webinars that I have done with Intelligent Demand, and it's awesome. It reminds me of Nintendo. I have a Nintendo right outside here that my kids occupy frequently when they get technology time. We can link to that body of work and show everyone what it's going to look like and feel like and how it hooks into the brand objectives. The larger the organization, the more important that particular line is going to be, because if you've ever heard brand or creative police, it's a bad term. What that really means is they are used to people not integrating with them, and they have to come back and course correct. So this is something we're trying to preempt when we build a plan or campaign. So again, lots of details here, but this is an example of a summary view of how we can organize an integrated campaign to get everyone on the same page and condition folks to expect this information to be provided for every campaign. Okay, Rachel, I know the work that you all do. So anything you'd like to add here?
Yeah, I think for me, the word maintain is key. It is critical because I've seen it happen where, everything is planned out properly and integrated and you're aligned with the right people and ready to go. And this document is created, but it's never updated and it's never maintained. And when you look at it, you then may make a decision based on that data that's not up to date. And that's as if my weather app stopped working as of 2 months ago. And I looked at it, saw what the weather showed for 2 months ago, and dressed based on that. I'm either going to be really hot, really cold, or really wet, but it's not going to be accurate for today for me to make a decision around. So if you're not maintaining this document and consistently adding on to where you're at now, what decisions have been made, you're not able to effectively decide what you should be doing next. You're just also not seeing the benchmarks of where you started and where you've grown from there. So I think that's a huge one for me. It kind of goes back to it's not that set it and forget it type of model.
Love that. And, I will say, for me, it's easier with the weather because when I used to travel all the time, the only difference was a heavy jacket, right? Like it was always blazer, jeans, dress shirt. So, but again, I'm caveman with no sense of style. So I know that that's a more difficult decision for others. All right, next, the third step here before we start to transition into solving some of the challenges. Schedule a regular cadence for ongoing alignment check-ins with stakeholders. Again, Rachel's going to chime in on this one, but I will tell you, when you are in an effective meeting, you feel it. You feel it. And at Topo, one of the methodologies we always had, it was PAL, P-A-O, Purpose, Agenda, Outcome. Every meeting that was booked from a seller or account manager that occupied time from an analyst, they had to have purpose, agenda, outcome. That was also for prospects as well, because we wanted folks to see, hey, we only have 30 minutes. We only have 50 minutes. We only have an hour, however long we have. Here's what we're going to talk about. Here's what we're going to work through together. And then here's the desired outcome. Another thing that I'll stress here, knowing what is happening next. So there are templates for this. I know that we've created them at Topo and Gartner. I'm sure Intelligent Demand has research on this as well. But running an effective, well-built meeting is very important to the process of integrated planning and executing an integrated campaign. So we need a consistent structure. We need to know who is kind of the presenter for that meeting, who's going to be sharing information. And we want this to feel like an event that folks want to attend, to hear how things are going. What are the successes? Hey, what do we do next? This should not feel like, let's go through our project management software and check out 27 items that are not due yet, that are not complete, that are due. Because then that's just the guilt. Folks know what work has to be done. So the thing I would stress here, find the right level of this integrated meeting and make sure that you are scheduling meetings. This cannot happen only on a tool like Slack or Teams. This cannot happen only in email. We just have to communicate. We have to have actual meetings to talk through the work to do it well. So that's my 2 cents here. Rachel, I'll let you jump in. I know that your calendar is somewhat booked most days.
Yeah, I've color coordinated it though, so it looks very pretty when I look at it, albeit overwhelming. But yeah, I think in your analogy, agenda, tying into that piece a bit, in really helping to establish the roles and expectations of anyone joining the call. I've seen calls run very effectively when you are able to kind of task out the expectations and what role you want each person to play. So you're making it be more of a discussion, more of a collaborative environment. If you were just showing up and basically spewing out where you're at, giving a status update, giving just a dump of information to the other team members, they're not going to be as engaged. They're not going to be as, willing to participate, and they're not going to retain as much had they been tasked to bring something to that meeting or share something ahead of time. So I think getting people involved, tasking things out ahead of time and setting those expectations and the roles you want them to play within that agenda really helps to ensure that that information is sinking in and then being carried out as people go on about their day.
Love it.
All right. So you've got a plan. You've worked through the spreadsheet, you've pulled in the people you need, you've drilled it down to the level you need. Now you've got to protect it. There are going to be a lot of things thrown your way. Things already are thrown your way in your day-to-day within a given week, within a given month, that will knock you off course. So it is no different after you have done your best to put together an integrated plan for a campaign. So what we want to make sure we're able to talk through now are some of the common pitfalls that we've seen, some of the common challenges that we see most often with our clients, and then how we can solve for them together. Because protecting this plan and continuing to protect it, again, it's not ever a set and forget it type of a thing. You have to consistently check in and make sure that these outside threats are not challenging the success of your campaign and knocking you off course. So diving into some of the threats that we see, I'm going to take the first 4 or so, Chris, and then kick it over to you, because the first 4, I think, excite me the most in terms of, where I've seen things go wrong and challenging that we've been able to course correct for clients and help scale and grow going forward. And so the number 1 on the far left hand you're going to see is just misalignment. And this goes back to sales and marketing and all stakeholders involved, really. We have seen time and time again that if from the very beginning you do not pull in all of the proper roles and proper people that need to be involved, and it's not just from a decision-making process, you need to make sure that people that are going to be expected to carry out the other components of this campaign, maybe it's BDR and sales team, maybe it's, marketers that are on the ground. Anyone that's going to touch this campaign and be expected to help carry it out throughout its execution and life cycle, they need to know what's going on. They need to feel as though they have buy-in and feel a part of the process to really want to adopt to the process and get excited about it and then help carry it out from there. When you don't have that, it makes it very difficult to get people on board after the fact. A perfect example, we had worked with a client a couple years back where we had thought we had everyone involved in the process, and we were told that we did, and we were all excited. And a day before launch, sales was given all of the materials, and they said, well, wait a minute, not on board with this. This doesn't match our quota. We weren't consulted on any of this, and, we had to press time out, go back to the drawing board and work with them to make sure that everyone was truly involved this time. And it delayed launch. We missed a critical window within this buying life cycle for the product. And a lot of learnings came out of that, I think, on all sides, but we never from that point on wanted to take it for granted and just assume that everyone that was involved should be. We now make a point from the very beginning of any campaign. We want everyone in that room that needs to be, anyone who touches it makes a decision on it, get them in the room. Let's talk through all of the parts and pieces and goals so we're aligned and we don't have that misalignment. Another big threat that we see is specifically around goals. And to me, I kind of think about it from the perspective of, if you give me a $500 gift card to Amazon, you can be sure that nothing I put in my cart and buy makes any sense. There is nothing that is cohesive. It's all over the place. It's whatever pops in my brain around, that's cool, I like it, I think I should need it. And when it comes to goals, we see a lot of that happen too. We see clients get excited. Naturally, they have a budget, they have a plan, and they have a team and they're ready to move. And instead of focusing on one bigger picture objective, a lot of times we start there and then it spirals to, oh, but this other thing would be cool. And maybe we could pull this in as well. And what about this thing over here that I totally forgot I needed, but I now want? It starts to spiral quickly. And the more goals that are thrown in the mix, the more difficult it makes things for a million reasons as we go through and talk through solutions. Another big challenge that we see is around goals when it comes to internal teams and making decisions based on what you as the client or company want, and less about what the account or the buying persona and the team, what they care about. Focusing less on pain points and customer experience and more on what you want to push. And we certainly understand that clients have products and goals and things they need to be measured against. So we're not saying by any stretch, ignore those, but we have seen things go wrong when clients will focus more on, I need to push X product out there and make sure I have Y conversions around this one specific product. And the audience we're targeting to isn't aware of the product. They don't really have a need for it. They're not, at a point with their current product that they would be up for renewal. We see things go wrong quickly when we're not addressing pain points of the customer directly and focused more on the internal piece of thing. And a fourth common challenge that we see is around deadlines. We know everyone has deadlines. It is a part of life, a part of work, and it's not going to change. However, when the focus is too heavily on deadlines, quality starts to get sacrificed. Things start to get deployed in more of a siloed way. And we think less about the bigger picture and tying things into that. And does this decision make sense? Does launching now make sense for these bigger picture goals? We're just pushing things out to get them out, to say, I got something live by this date. And in the short term, that may look good and it may feel good from an activity standpoint. But if you remember back to earlier in the presentation, we're really wanting to get away from activity and thinking more on growth and revenue and how we're able to make this be an overarching success and not just looking at it from the perspective of, I met a milestone on this day, because that at the end of the day isn't going to help prove any return and that you need additional budget to keep scaling and growing. So next three are all you, Chris.
All right, I'll cover these quickly because I am confident that everyone wants us to start to solve these, and their heads may be exploding like this alien that is exploding on the slide. So the three more challenges that we see and threats. Number one, cost reductions. This can be in several forms. It can be let's do less campaigns, let's do less programs, or let's change the tactics or the approach for how we go out and try to close business, which there are problems with each of the three scenarios there. We'll talk about some of the ways to solve that, but in many cases, the full touch is extremely important, not just individual tactics. So we'll talk through that in one or two slides. Then also too many optimizations. This is scientific experiment at its best here. If we are changing too many things at one time, it's difficult for us to correlate what is actually happening. That is a threat that we see in many instances, changing a ton of things at once. And then lastly, the seventh challenge here, actually having no optimizations at all. There is a lot of set it and forget it happening with integrated programs and plans, as Rachel discussed. So we want to make sure that is not the case. And I think, Rachel, I'm going to click to this next one. I believe folks are ready for us to jump in, but I will let you make the determination here.
I'm excited. This is the thing I've been looking forward to most in all of this, and I'm sure you're on the same boat. So yeah.
All right, let's do it. I'll let you
Perfect.
get started here since you covered the first few.
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to when Chris was talking about planning the third step around meetings and getting people involved and making sure that expectations are set. There's an agenda ready. Within that, make it a regular part of that meeting to record it and have that video available via a link, whether it's in your project management tools, whether you send it out through email, but make sure it's in the same place every week. Set a regular cadence for these meetings. Make sure you're always sending out meeting notes and the expectations ahead of time as well. The more that you can document and share and ask for feedback around the documents that you're using and get everyone involved, the more success you're going to have in keeping these meetings on track, keeping these meetings engaging, and keeping them on the calendar. The more people are engaged in a meeting, the less likely you are to get an hour before a ping from Slack saying, hey, can't make it, this other thing popped up. That will happen, of course, but people will make this meeting more of a priority when they feel invested, involved, and know exactly what is expected and where to find things. If they do have to miss a meeting, they can catch up quickly with meeting notes and a virtual recording. In terms of a second solve, when it comes to goals, we know there's a lot of things that people are going to want to accomplish, but selecting one overarching goal to start and then maybe some softer metrics to look at is really going to be beneficial. You can always add on from there with another goal down the road when you're piloting some other campaign or even putting in a phase 2 on the campaign that you've already launched. But if you're trying to do too many things, it just splits up the budget. It starts to unravel the messaging. If you're focused on product, then awareness, and then just engagement around the brand as a whole, those are 3 very different goals, and it starts to break things up, and you're going to have a less effective campaign in all and see less effective results. So pick one, go from there, and then you can slowly kind of phase it out if you do want additional focus areas from a goal perspective. A solve for number 3, which was focusing more on internal client pain points and products and things that you want to sell to meet goals and less on CX. We say time and time again, CX first, always. If you are not putting your end user, your audience, your buying persona first, you are not grabbing their attention effectively. It's almost, it is very easy for people to just ignore things that are put in front of their face. Attention spans are lower. People are bombarded with email, direct mail, media, banner ads all the time. So things have to be relevant and marketed towards their unique needs, their pain points, what they're feeling on a given day, if you want to make sure that there is any chance to grab their attention, to engage these users and pull them in, to be interested in what it is that you're trying to discuss and sell and market within your campaign. And the fourth solution is around deadlines. And again, we know they can't be moved, but what we've seen work really well is phasing things out. And if we have a first deadline that we absolutely cannot miss for whatever reason, maybe we only launch a couple of tactics for your one-to-one audience. Or maybe we launch one email to your one-to-few accounts if we're talking ABM, and then we focus on one vertical, one segment. Phase things out in a way that you can slowly grow from there, and that it won't segment anything awkwardly or make anything stall out. You can continue to flow, but that will help ensure that you are meeting certain deadlines you need and not rushing the production of a lot of different materials and content offers just to meet an earlier deadline, because that's when you sacrifice quality and sacrifice the unification of all of the messages and creative themes. And on to you, Chris.
All right, awesome. So the fifth threat, just to recap, was cost reduction. If we are nervous or fearful about a potential cost reduction, even if we're not, The first thing we should do is pilot a campaign with a smaller segment to show value. I would even go a step further and say maybe we do that with an account we already know. Maybe we try to expand an account because we have more information about them and we can show what that ideal state feels like. Another quick tip there, we want to track success very early. So moving a target account into an engaged account or creating engagement in that account we're trying to expand. We need to celebrate those wins. It's not only closed revenue, even though we want to attach our metrics to closed revenue. We need to show that success quickly. The sixth threat was making too many optimizations at one time. The thing that I would say there is we want to add on slowly. Once we have a tactic, go through that tactic or touch, and then give it the time, love, and attention that it needs. Now, there are times where we do 3 in a day. That's called a triple touch. We may go or have our SDR team approach someone on email and on LinkedIn and call them or leave them a voicemail. We still need those things to happen because it could be the combination of 3 things happening at once that's making goodness happen, creating that engagement. So we want to just slowly add on additional things or additional optimizations to try to improve what we're doing. We can't do a million things at once. And then lastly, if we're not making any optimizations, part of that is that we probably haven't planned to do it. So as we start the planning process, we need to set aside a portion of budget, even if it's small, to run some experimentation, to try some different testing, to do some different things to start to optimize and improve. And that also starts to create a culture of improving as we go and celebrating those learnings and those wins, which is very important. This is not set it and forget it. So, Rachel, I think we are coming on time here. We can jump to key takeaways. I'll let you get started on this one as well.
Yeah, so number one thing to keep in mind is integration will lead to better campaign outcomes. We have lots of stats that we've walked through to help showcase that, lots of client examples that we've walked through, but at the end of the day, less wasted budget, less wasted time, improved CX, and better campaign outcomes are what you're going to see with integration. Planning effectively, also key. Making sure that everything Chris walked through is implemented. And it's easy to get started. You really just need to work Excel in a spreadsheet, get in there, make sure you're monitoring it and updating it frequently. You've pulled in the right people to get information around what campaigns are live and when, and then continuing to put a cadence on the calendar to talk about it, to get people aligned and make sure that everything that you've worked hard to put into place, you're able to protect. And third takeaway is just ensuring it remains integrated, protecting your plan, protecting your campaign, and not allowing all of these little threats that can pop up around budget, CX, deadlines to derail you in any way. So those are the big 3. Which brings us to Q&A.
All right. Thanks very much, Rachel and Chris. It was a great conversation and just filled with some amazing insight, chock full of great takeaways. And before we jump into some audience questions, and I know we're running up against time, but we've got a couple, so let's try to see if we can get through a couple here. One quick note, if after today you do have questions that we can't get to right now about the framework, about how to implement it at your company, or just general questions about driving growth, reach out to us. This is what we do at Intelligent Demand, and we'd love to show you for your unique use case. So we do have a couple of questions, though, and let's try to dive into a couple of these, Chris and Rachel, if that's cool. Chris, the first one is for you, I think. Question is, how do you effectively set the right expectations for sales when discussing an integrated approach with that team? Because most sales teams expect fast results and immediate pipeline impact.
That's a great question. The first thing is just that aligned conversation. So we need to be having constant and frequent dialogue and agreeing on the accounts that we are going after if this is account-based. If we're talking targeted demand generation, we may have less involvement with sales than we would in account-based. But for an account-based approach, the first point of unification is going to be agreeing on the accounts that are on the list. That's going to create some consensus and some buy-in. And then starting to understand how marketing can influence the improving conversions and conversations that we want them to have. So how can marketing work together to create more engagement at a target account? And then why should we celebrate that first win? Because that's going to help the seller or the SDR have a better, more impactful conversation. So it all starts in the planning process. Any question like that, I would think 2-3 steps before and think, how do we start to build alignment and consensus with sales? And let's start there, and then we can work into the more specifics.
Excellent. Rachel, one for you now. How do you balance your integrated plan with a multitude of other pre-existing programs you have to support? How do you bring these things together?
Yeah, that's also a good one. I think that goes back to some of what Chris was talking around with how to plan and where you want to plug in that information. If there is one living and breathing document that you can plug all of the now state into, view what else is going on, whether it's within your unique business unit, other business units within the organization, but see that holistic 30,000-foot view of all things happening. That's going to allow you to better plan, you to better predict when your campaign will have the highest likelihood of success, and then uniquely map out your details within a spreadsheet, Excel, however, to document and continue to maintain that. That's going to allow you to always check in on the overarching state and always tweak your campaign based on that and based on what you're seeing happen results-wise to ensure that you're using the most up-to-date data and not letting any outdated data or incorrect data influence your decisions.
Excellent. I think we've got time for one more here. Rachel, this one's for you, but Chris would love to hear your perspective here as well. But the question, things are always changing at my organization. How do I maintain integration with pieces constantly moving around?
Yeah, I think that really goes back to mapping it out properly and continuing to maintain that living, breathing document. The more you're able to add on to it and ensure that that is up to date and evolving, it's going to allow you to better keep tabs on what's going on and when. Also having those regularly scheduled meetings and bringing in the right people, having that alignment with the stakeholders, the people involved in decision-making, and also just running the day-to-day within your campaign. That's going to allow you to make sure that you are always checking in with the people that are involved and making sure that you are hearing their thoughts, their opinions, and it will allow you to head off any challenges that may come up should you not have that same level of alignment.
Chris, anything you would add?
I would just.
Yep. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're perfect, Mike. Yeah, I would just add the consistency that Rachel's talking to. That's what we need to reinforce, that there is an ongoing recurring time when we get together and we talk about this in a diligent, effective, well-run meeting. That's the type of setting we're going to have about this. And then we're going to organize things in a consistent way as well. So whatever our brief or template or plan looks like, we need to do that for every single campaign. So the more we can make this repeatable and something that is expected, that's how we can create the alignment no matter what's happening in the organization.
Awesome. Well, thanks to everybody who submitted the questions today. They were terrific. I want to also thank Chris and thank Rachel for their time together, time today. But before everybody heads out to the rest of your day, just a couple of final thoughts. As a reminder, today's webinar will be made available on demand, so look for a link to that very, very soon. And we're going to continue to do these every few weeks, every month or so. Continue to put together very, very valuable, high-level series of insightful conversations. So just be on the lookout for some additional invites from us, and looking forward to seeing you at our next opportunity. So on behalf of Rachel and Chris, thanks to everybody for attending, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, everyone.